Good morning, Ashley. How are you doing?
Good morning, Constantine. Good. I'm good. It's Sunday and it is warm here. I get to go to the beach today. The everything is packed. My cooler's packed. I am ready to
Ready
go.
to go. Ah, too bad I
What's
can't do
the
that here in
temperature
Canada.
up there in Canada?
Today actually is not bad. It's like 20, maybe 15, between 15 and 20.
That's
So
better than it has been, but you still have quite a bit of snow, right?
we do. It's melting though. We got down from like 4 feet to maybe one and a half. So we're getting there.
Okay. You're moving up.
Moving up, moving up. So today, as some of the people may see the ticker go by, we want to talk about the connection between spirit and body. And this topic came up because I'm on a 5 day fast. Well, technically 6 days right now. We'll break it later today. And I've come to realize later in life, like in the last year or so, that fasting, specifically intermittent fasting, as some would call it, actually does a lot more than cleanse your body physically and help you lose weight, which is one of the primary reasons I embarked on this journey a long time ago with intermittent fasting. So maybe we'll start there, Ashley. Do you have what's your take on fasting and essentially decluttering, so to speak, your body, your mind, your spirit
Yeah.
from things that have accumulated over time?
Yeah. Well, I think first, I just want to give anyone who's tuning in now or later just kind of a little, I don't know, a flash or whatever that this conversation I think is going to be really great to tune into because Constantine and I think this is one of the areas where sometimes we differ significantly in regards to the connection of the body and spirit. So I think this is going to be a really fruitful conversation. Um, but yeah, I think first of all, I just think our body is a projection of the mind. So
Mhm.
I'm a firm believer you can change nothing at the level of effect, which would be the projection, which is your body, that isn't first changed at the level of the mind.
Yeah.
So like when you don't like the when you do this fast or whatever, it's a result of some level of change at the mind that happened already. When a lot of people might enter into a fast trying to impact their mind, if that makes sense. Yes, it
Yes.
can appear that way. Of course, it always appears that way because it comes after. But I think that is like a really cool representation of where you are with spirit. And it's almost like you get to experience that connection of cause and effect very clearly. And I think I can't wait to hear where you're at, Constantin, on day freaking 6. I know you said you're slow today, but I feel like right now, because you've cleared yourself of another shiny object. I was telling you before we started that I believe, we got here because we believe, in fact, that we kind of killed God in a way, but everything then in this illusion is about us needing to consume in order to live. And not just like we're eating people, but you're constantly consuming. You think when someone gives you love that they have less love. When you give love, you have less love. It's like
Mm,
this
yes.
I if I have, someone must be lacking mentality, which is the same as eating, right? Like something has to die in order for us to eat. And yes, I know there's tons of crap made now that's synthetic, but the concept, you get it. Something has to die in order to eat. So you've taken the last 6 days to no longer allow that ego's distraction to get in the way. So, like, what has come up for you? I know, like, first of all, in the last month and a half, you've had tons of stuff come up, but I can only
Yes.
imagine over the last 6 days.
I love what you just shared there, Ashley. So many things resonate so deeply now. And there were realizations much later in life than I would like to admit, but still the realizations nonetheless. And I guess
Time
let's start.
doesn't really exist, Constantine.
I know, right? But let's say it does for a second here, right? And I look at my life so far. I got really big into looking at health about 2020 to 2021 during the pandemic. And during that time, I got really fit, I got really in shape. And then, of course, though the world reopened, my ego got in the way again. I started traveling again for work and whatnot. And I lost track of all the things, right? Because I was doing it at the level of the mind. So the level, I guess, of the body and the mind, not the level of spirit, connecting and seeing, okay, what do I have to heal first in order to be able to sustain whatever it is I'm trying to sustain,
Mhm.
which for me was a healthier lifestyle in all areas of life. But there was so much packed within, let's call it my trauma or my inner child, that I had to first go through some of those layers to really understand what's preventing me from getting to the next level, which we'll dive into a second. But when it comes to intermittent fasting, there's a lot of research surfacing. And this was like almost 4 years ago now when I was reading on this, and I was reading research papers and looking at how they found massive benefits in 18-hour fast. So doing the intermittent fasting, where you do 18 to 20 hours fast, and then you eat in a 4 to 6 hour window every day. Then I believe the next level up was like 22 to 24 hours, 36 hours, 3 days, and then beyond 5 days, right? There's different benefits at each stage. I'm not going to talk on them because I'm not privy to the information right now this second, because it's been a few years, but I know there's a lot of benefits. Now, when I say a lot of benefits, they were mostly related to your physical aspect, meaning that your cell autophagy would like kick in and your cells will regenerate at certain points, right? You will start eliminating toxins, things of that nature, right? Which they're all very, very important. But what I found interesting looking back now, not a lot of the research I was reading and people interpreting it were talking about the effect on the mind and the effect on spirit, or rather your connection to spirit and your emotions, which is what I found to be a lot more interesting once I dove deeper into it. So you see, you said, you mentioned that a lot of things happened in the last 2 months, and my connection to spirit has grown significantly. And it actually all started, funny enough, from a bunch of catalysts, but one of them was a 7-day fast I did back in early January. And at the time I was doing it because I'm like, I need to get back in shape, right? So the need effect is like, oh, I need to get back in shape because people will see me as less than if I'm not in the top shape of my life, because I let myself go. And it came from that level. But there was also something in the back of my mind that was telling me, you know what, this is going to be good for you in other ways. I didn't realize it until, of course, maybe even a month later after I was done. And it brought up so much, because what I have found as I fast, so today is day 6, actually, and my plan is to break the fast later today, is that it is a journey into how do you essentially, not control is not the word I'm looking for, Ashley. What's the word here? How do you slow down your ego enough, slow down your mind enough to not continually be in this rat race where you need to consume, like you said, be it social media, be it food in this case, nutrients that you know that sometimes are not the best for you. And then realize that once you're able to do that, the days go by effortlessly. I mentioned to you earlier today that day 6 has been the toughest for me historically. But the first 5 days, I didn't even flinch. Like I had a couple of days where maybe a thought came up, oh, I should eat. Not because I was hungry, but because I was like, I'm bored, or something came up. It's like, maybe I should eat, right? So I feel like that's kind of what I am right now. Now, in terms of, we said we're going to dive deeper into what is coming up emotionally and spiritually for me, but we'll do that in a second. I'll just pause there because I said a lot of things. I want to see what resonates with you, what doesn't, where you want to go from here.
Yeah, I mean, I love all that, and I think it's so beautiful. And again, the way in which I view what has happened for you is not that the fast caused a spiritual breakthrough. The fast didn't impact anything at the level of the mind. Instead, what I see occurred is that the fast cleared out some noise so you could hear what was always there the entire time. And I think there's a couple things I want to share here that I know when I really moved into the spiritual, new age movement and just spirituality, this big movement of spirituality, right? Where it's the shiny object. When I moved into that, one of the things, the messages I received, and maybe I just my perception was crazy, was that in order to be really sound spiritually or be really spiritual, you must have this beautiful body. You must radiate, you must be healthy and not sick and all of that. And what I found is that's not the case for everyone. Yes, I do believe your body begins to go back to its most innate state, but we're here for forgiveness lessons, and everybody is equally poor in spirituality when they get here. Yes. That's why they're here. Otherwise, you're not going to tell me that you're some enlightened being that was born here enlightened, because it can't happen. You wouldn't be here, period. You would not be here. So what's to say that someone who has cancer isn't just as spiritual as someone who's super healthy? Because we think that, like, oh, okay, so if you're super spiritual and healed at the level of the mind, it will no longer be projected out in your body. But if that is a forgiveness lesson, what if that person who has cancer, the cancer isn't actually even impacting them because they have forgiven it? They have released the weight from it. So I think we put so much weight on the body, is what I'm trying to say. And it's another smoke and mirror. It's another piece of the illusion to keep you distracted. I mean, how often are people distracted with, oh my gosh, does my hair look okay, Constantine? Do I have something in my teeth? Oh my gosh, these pants are too fat. How does my ass look? Like, what a beautiful distraction. And it is literally the ego's vessel. The ego, like, this is its vessel to make sure you know that you are separate. Right? Like, that you do everything for the body because you see yourself as a separate body. So I know I kind of went off on a tangent there, but I just wanted people, because I know that was something that started to hit me, was like, oh man, so unless I look a certain way, then I'm not spiritual. There's a lot of big spiritual people today that are moving up. And, you and I have talked about some of them. One of them you really like. He tends to lead famous people on ayahuasca trips. I'm not going to say the name, but they look like chiseled gods. And like, that is the image of spirituality. But if we think back to people that we actually know are enlightened and didn't like advertise it, didn't try to sell it to people, that was Buddha. And the depiction of Buddha's body is not a chiseled god, right? Mother Teresa, Jesus, which there's huge discrepancy of what Jesus looked like. I mean, we have this white Jesus depicted, but where he was born and raised, I'm not quite sure that that's what he would look like, but that's a conversation for a different day. And then like Ram Dass, people like, they don't have that image. So again, I think you just cleared away the noise, Constantin, so you could hear what's always been there. It's not like the fast all of a sudden made you this person that's connected to these spiritual beings. You've always been connected. You just been too distracted eating.
Yes, and I love what you touched on. So many parts there, actually.
Sorry.
I mean, I agree with pretty much most of what you said, right? There's some things I would be like, let's go deeper, but there are a couple of things I would like to touch on. The idea that the fast was a catalyst, right? To remove the noise, to remove the clutter, to allow this connection to become more clear. Absolutely agree with that 100%. That's how I feel inside. The second part of that, which is so amazing to look at, is the idea that we get distracted by so many things, right? And I looked at my life. I did an inventory not long ago. And for me, food, Netflix, gaming were huge distractions in the past. Shiny toys, right? I would go work hard, and then I would spend my money on distractions. Like, how do I keep my mind busy? Out of fear of being alone with my own thoughts, right? Because even if I had, let's say, 20 minutes between meetings, and I could meditate, I could do something where I could be with my own thoughts, or let's say with my guides, I would be distracted. And I would argue that most people in today's society are doing that, because I'm seeing it all over around me, right? With people in my life. And when I go to restaurants and when I go shopping, like, there's no moment where we give ourselves time to be with ourselves. So that ego game you're talking about, that's a game that's being very successful right now because of all the distractions we have access to. And what happens in my case, if I get distracted by food, which I have been in the past, and I'm not saying right now I'm not, in this moment I'm not, but there are days where I will be, because I'm not perfect. Nothing is perfect here. But what happens is I get distracted, I go eat, let's say, something I shouldn't be eating. Shouldn't in the sense that I know it makes me feel lethargic, it makes me feel less than ideal in my case, right? And I go eat that, and then it pretty much not ruins, but like slows down my entire day or evening, right? So a good example for me would be all you can eat sushi, right? Those are very popular in Canada. I'm not sure about the States, or buffets in general. You go, you eat a lot, which is, great food in terms of like it satisfies those cravings, that ego part, but then you're like done for the rest of the day. For most people, I've seen some that are not, but most people are like, okay, so what has happened in the case? Well, you gave yourself even less of a chance to connect. And one of the things I've come to realize, and I'll stop there actually to pass it back to you, is that all of us, like you said, come into this life forgetting everything we know, forgetting that we are a soul in a human body and not the other way around. And as we get through life, there is inspiration, there is connection to source that's trying to come through to tell us, hey, there's more here. But a lot of us, because of the distractions, we don't necessarily allow that in. And sometimes it gets through for whatever reason. Maybe you go on a fast by choice or no choice. It comes through. Maybe you do something else. It comes through a bit, and it kind of opens you up a bit. And that's how I feel my life has been. It's been opening me up as I was growing up. But, in my case, I say it took 38 years. But it finally opened me up enough where I was like, oh, maybe I should look into this. And now we are where we are today. And I truly believe, like you said, that every single one of us here, not only are we all equal, but has the ability to connect to spirit, to get those messages, to be able to live a life that's more aligned with who they are at source, truly a source, rather than in this human form, in this body, in this ego.
Yeah. I mean, all very powerful things. And, I believe we are spirit. There is only one mind here that is spirit. And the body, again, is the distraction from that. The body is the vessel that makes you believe you are separate and that there's multiple individuals with different agendas, different needs to be met, different people to consume, right? I mean, essentially, if we break it down, we're cannibals because we're constantly consuming each other and things and, not like eating, but consuming in that aspect.
But I ask something really quick. You said something amazing there. Consuming. You know what came up when you said that? Energy.
What?
Energy.
Yeah. Consuming.
Because everything is energy, but like when I'm talking about energy, I'm talking about if you are someone that has high energy and I come into a room with you and I'm lower energy, I'm going to consume more energy. You go to a party or the life of the party, so to speak, you're the person that has high energy, you're going to get consumed. And that's part of this, right? I would imagine.
Yeah. I mean, that's when that is what you believe is occurring when you believe you are separate from someone else instead of like, oh, this high energy person is just another representation, a reflection of myself. What am I reflecting? Because there's only one here. But one thing I want to bring up, which might be mind blowing to some people, and this I think could be a discussion for a different day, is the placebo effect and how I believe everything here is an illusion. And if it's an illusion, it's all placebo. It's all things allowing the mind to heal. So when I envision this fast, I say it already was a shift at the level of the mind.
Mm-hmm.
But you and I kind of had this brief conversation the other day. I don't think it was on our live. I think this was there we go, thumbs up, a conversation we had. But essentially, if all of a sudden you started to get all these downloads for no reason, you'd start to freak out. I think that's how a lot of people get, diagnosed schizophrenic, bipolar, things like that, because they get these downloads with no explanation. And I don't know what that is, if it's a break in the veil or whatever. And these, again, are just my interpretations that your mind was ready to start receiving the connection that already exists, to remember, not even receive, remember that you are already receiving this. But if you just all of a sudden started getting the downloads, you might discount them. They might make you appear to be crazy. So instead it was like, okay, let's do a fast. And then that will be the placebo that helps the mind fully accept this.
I love that.
That's what happens with medication and everything. It's just like an ability to give the mind permission to heal. Because you're a healer. We talked about that. If you just start touching people and healing them, like it's going to be this whole mess of freak out. So instead, we have placebos that assist with that.
I love that. And what came up to me as you were talking about that, about downloads, because you see, I've been someone, and I guess for those in the audience that don't know this, so I'm 40 right now, about to turn 41. I've been on a spiritual journey since about early 2022. I grew up somewhat religious in Eastern Europe. And then during, I would say, when I came to Canada, 17 until maybe, I want to say 35, I wasn't spiritual at all. I mean, I don't go to church. I didn't go to church back then. But there were different things that happened in my life that had me go, How is that possible? But then the ego got in quickly and be like, nah, don't worry about it. It's a coincidence. It's something that happened. And I remember, as far back as I can go, that I've always received ideas. But the way I would see it, and the way I see this, like when I talk to people, like even my father and other people, they're like, oh, when I go to bed, I get these ideas.
Mm-hmm.
When I do this, when I'm in the shower, I get these ideas. And I believe that's the ego's interpretation of these downloads or your connection to spirit to say, hey, there's some ideas that are coming in. They must be ours because, like you said, we're separate, so we're just one. And that's how I imagine a lot of things come through and not scare people. Because if the message came through and it'd be like, hey, I'm whoever, I'm giving you this message, you probably would freak out, like in your example, and start to question yourself. And I'll be honest with you, Ashley, and you said something so beautiful there. I've been on this path for quite a while. Things have accelerated spiritually quite significantly. However, there are still days where I question my sanity. And I'm like, is this really happening? Am I going crazy? Mm-hmm. And I've been on this path for a while now because of the podcast I have, and you and I have had this conversation. I've had a chance to open my mind and my heart up to many, many different perspectives. So I have an idea of, let's say, a more of an idea than your average person, perhaps, about what's going on. And even then, I still question this at times, right? The questioning may impact an evening for me, right? Because it's a program that runs in my mind, even though I have the tools and the know-how to stop the program. By the times I fail, right? Because they're perhaps not the right tools, or perhaps that's the lesson I'm learning in the moment. I'm creating them for myself to remind myself what's important, what I want to believe in, or what I want to make real, essentially.
Right.
That's my take. And like now, as more messages come through, there's a realization for me, at least, that you're absolutely right. We're not separate from source. We are source, which means that we're all one, right? This idea of oneness. So from oneness, let's call it the oneness is the sun, not our actual sun, but let's call it the sun. Yeah. Then the rays of the sun, everything that gets projected, that's all of us. Mm-hmm. And then there might be another layer below that where it gets projected even more into this illusion, into this human form.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's the ego's ability to distract us and for us to miss the correlation of cause and effect. Because think about it, Constantine, if you sat here on this call right now and cussed me out and told me how awful a person I was and all this stuff, you would feel awful inside, wouldn't you? Because you're literally telling yourself. But if you sat and told me, Ashley, you're so great, like, I love what you're doing, I'm so proud of you, all this stuff, you feel it too.
Exactly.
Because you're telling yourself. But we would have correlated that as to Constantin said that and felt that way because he was angry before he said those things to Ashley and X, Y, and Z. No, saying those things is a result, is the effect, right? Is the fact at the level of the mind. You're just seeing it played out, and the way it feels is because of the correlation of the cause and effect, which we did. If you guys tune into last week's live, I literally did like a representation with a piece of paper, and we dig even deeper on cause and effect. But yeah, back to the body. I mean, this vessel is the ultimate vessel of distraction. It is the last thing to overcome. And I'm going to bring Jesus in here because I love my big brother Jesus. And if anybody knows anything about me, it's not the Jesus probably you've grown to believe exists, and the one that died for our sins because we're bad people. But instead, he's my big brother. He's all of our big brother because he's part of the one, right? So if we just want to see him as separate, who figured it out first, who figured out that the body doesn't matter because he was literally nailed to the cross and smiled at the guy nailing him to the cross, mind you. Like, I'm not at the point I could smile. And then proceeded to rise from the dead in a body. But what people saw that is like how important the body was and how we're bad people and how God's poor son had to die because we're such awful people, when we completely missed the point. Jesus came back to show us that your body doesn't matter. Look, I can literally show up in one again because it so doesn't matter.
That's actually, I love that take. And like I'm with you, right? Like I'm not I'm not religious in any way, shape, or form, but the more I go down this path, spiritual path, the more I realize that someone like Jesus, like Buddha, any other of the big enlightened people, they're no different than you and I. They figured it out
They
before.
are us.
They figured it out for whatever reason, right? They maybe had a different connection. Now, I'm a big believer that when we come into this world, Ashley, we as souls, because we're all powerful, we're all equal, we choose an experience. It's almost like, because I'm a gamer, I used to be a gamer, to me, it almost looks like a MMO, which is a massive online multiplayer game type thing, right? You pick an avatar, you pick a character, be like, oh, in this life, I want to experience this. And then you come in with those attributes, you come in with that purpose, and you come into this life. And then through life, you may or may not experience what you came here to do because of free will. And I truly believe that free will is one law of this universe, along with many other laws like law of balance and polarity and others. And some people, perhaps due to circumstance, due to their mission in life, whatever, were able to find this earlier. And then through them, others get enlightened, right? Because I think you said this at one point on my podcast, or maybe in a conversation, we're all just walking each other home, which is a beautiful quote. Is it
Ram Dass's? It's
Yeah.
Ram Dass's quote. Yeah, that's like
Yeah.
my favorite quote ever.
Yeah, I think that you said it on
Awesome.
the podcast, I remember, from like a year ago. And that's how it feels to me. It's like, as I'm going on this journey myself, I'm seeing the impact it has on other people without even me, quote unquote, wanting to impact them. I'm just being me. I'm being authentic. I'm bringing energy. I'm bringing more of my authentic self, which then gives permission to others to do the same, or at least question and be like, how can Constantin and Ashley do that? Why can't I? And I feel like that's
Constantine, if we're one mind, right? Like if literally, because the problem is there's not words to explain this, first of all, because it's outside the illusion. Words were created within the illusion. So we have to like use things that help our brain to understand, because the brain was also created in the illusion. The
Yes.
mind is not the brain. When I refer to the mind, that is the one, the like spirit, the one that is here. So that means, okay, so let's just picture the mind as like a big circle and a pie, and there's tons of, or the sun, let's do the sun, right? Like and all the rays come down. Well, if one ray, if all the rays are like jaggedy and not doing very well, and like the sun is starting to die off, if one of the rays starts to find its light again, it heals the sun. Because the sun is, which means every single ray is impacted in the healing that ray did in its projection.
Yes.
So you are healed.
100%.
So one of my favorite quotes from A Course in Miracles, and I said quote because I was going to quote it, but whatever. I might have the words not perfectly, but it only takes one to heal the whole. I think the question is like, how many sons of God does it take to heal the whole? And the answer is one. And it's also, the answer is one because there is only one. Right? Like it is only one, but we all feel so damn special. And don't get me wrong, I go on this trip a lot of like, oh, I'm so special. Like I'm the chosen one. I mean, I love the show The Chosen, and they're all chosen, right? To be disciples of Jesus and blah, blah. When in fact, like, we're all equally spiritually poor. We come, this is my belief again, we come here, which, you know, some of our beliefs are similar, Constantin. Like, I do believe the script is already written. I believe there's forgiveness lessons, and because it's holographic, we can shift the hologram to see it differently, but the lessons are already laid out. You know, like what the trajectory of your future looks like. Is there millions of bazillions of options of that? Yeah, because a hologram, that's what it is. But you chose it. You were like, okay, to learn forgiveness at this level, I must have cancer in this lifetime, or I must go through divorce. I mean, I had so many major lessons to learn in this lifetime, which ultimately they're the same lesson, but my father committing suicide, me attempting suicide, my divorce, my grandpa leaving me when I was young, like all of these massive traumatic events. I mean, on the ACEs, I score like I have an awful score on ACEs, like the predisposition for me to like end up in prison and for me to have a heart attack and all these different things. But really, they were just forgiveness lessons. And once I release them and shift my perspective, I then heal the sun.
I mean, so many beautiful points to touch on there.
Sorry.
Actually, like
I
so
was
many
like,
things coming up. No, no, I love it. I love it. I love it. And what you said there first, I'll touch on one thing that came up at the very end there. You had to be hit over the head, so to speak, with this lesson multiple times until you finally realize, let's say, right? And that's how I feel life is. Like spirit wants you to remember, or your soul, let's say, wants you to remember. Oneness wants you to remember, so you can come into your power and do the work that you came here to do, whatever that work is. And there's different people that believe there's different reasons why we're here on this planet, right? We're not going to dive into that. So given your circumstances, given the place you're in, given the mentors you had in your life, whatever, those lessons may stick or may not. And I look at my life, I guess like you, different type of lessons, but I got hit over and over. And it's about love, like Sue mentions here in the comments in the live Instagram. It's all about love. But what? Love of self, right? Which is what yourself is. Forgiveness of self is actually loving yourself for who you are. And that's a journey that I've realized I've like, oh, I've made so much progress on it. And then every now and then I get reminded, this is a lifelong journey. There's still more to do. There's still more layers to unpack. And it's so beautiful to see. And one of the other things that come up before I pass it back to you, unless you want to add anything here, Ashley, when it comes to energy, have you ever walked into a room, let's say in your younger days when you weren't at this stage in your spiritual progression and love of self, right, and you saw someone that was high energy, positive energy, high energy, and it literally filled you up in a way, right? It filled up your battery and you felt better, maybe for the evening or for the day or even for the weekend. I know it happened a lot for me. But I've also been that person that I would light up a room because of my energy in the past, but because I didn't know my power, I didn't know who I am as source, I would get drained. And I would come back in vibration or frequency, if you may want to call it that way, and now reset me, so to speak. But now, as I'm building up my energy, and as I'm understanding my frequency and how I'm growing up, understanding my power, understanding who I am, I can not necessarily protect myself when I go there, but because I know who I am, that energy level can be perhaps drained a bit, but not much. And there was a beautiful video I saw by a Buddhist monk. He literally had one glass of water that was half full. Okay? And he's like, think of this as the energy of your average person. And if I want to help you, Ashley, or if I go into a room that people have even less than me, it's like, if I want to give you some energy, I have to pour out of my glass for you, right? And then eventually the glass goes empty. And then he took a glass that was full, and he took the pitcher of water that he had, and he started pouring in both glasses. And you could see that as soon as the glass is full, whatever you're pouring overflows. And that's the energy you give out to others, the love you give out to others. Because if your container is full of love for self and for everyone else, then you're overflowing. So you're not giving from yours to bring yourself down. You're giving from the overflow. You touched on this at the beginning, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, well, I think we really dived more into this on last week's live about abundance, love, and self-love. And the question is, where do you see your source of abundance? And when I used to really see my source of abundance as within the illusion, whether it was energy or money or whatever it was, something illusionary, I would run out. I had the ability to run out. So I had to overfill. But the more and more that I untie the ego and really step into where the true source is, or where I believe the true source is, which is the Holy Spirit, your highest self, which is what, you are spirit, is it's never ending, period. And we're all connected to that. So this goes into the beginning, like you said, of the consumption piece. That is what the ego wants us to believe. The ego wants us to live with the values of I must When I take, you have less. When I give, I have less. So this constant like um up and down, less, it's this take, it's consuming, because if you give to me, I consumed some of what yours was. And so we're constantly eating each other instead of realizing that, in fact, in order to receive, you must give, because it's this constant flow, and there is never any lack in it. It is always a positive. It is never a take. It is always a give, and it's just never ending, period. So it's like like when I'm sitting here, like, yeah, I'm a body and I'm in this illusion, I will be tired, I do go to sleep, I will feel run down, but that's because I'm viewing it through the ego belief system. And in that moment, a lot of times I try to remind myself, oh, you're dreaming you're tired, you're dreaming you're this, because you have endless energy and endless love of what you truly are. It's just right now you're dreaming that you're this body that can run out of energy, this body that can be, lacking if it gives to someone else, or it can be overflowing if it takes too much from
Yeah,
someone else.
absolutely. Love it
Yeah.
actually. And the giving and receiving piece, it's interesting because someone mentioned this to me a while back now, and it got me thinking quite a bit, right? Because we're very poor on average at actually receiving. I'm speaking from experience here because receiving for me, and I'll explain more in a second, was tough. And I'm not talking about receiving money for my work, but it can go there as well for your services and whatnot. But to me, it's more receiving the love of others, receiving the kindness of others, receiving the praise of others. Why? Because I wasn't loving myself. So I didn't feel I was worthy enough of someone praising me, someone giving me something. So because I was poor at receiving, I was also very poor at giving. Right? Because like if I couldn't give to myself, why would I give to others? And to me, there's a big illusion in the world where you see these people, amazing humans, amazing souls, amazing loving people, they give themselves for a cause. Be there a caregiver for someone that's ill for decades and decades, right? They give everything out, right? But they sacrifice themselves in the process. And you have other people that do this in other fields and whatnot. And what I've come to realize, and again, this comes from my understanding, is that if they took a second to take care of themselves as well, to find that balance for itself, then they could care even better for the people they care for, and perhaps aid them in whatever it is that they're recovering from. Because they're not always drained, they're not always externalizing everything. And I put myself in the situation because I was that person a decade plus ago, right? And it was very draining, and I was miserable because I never put myself first. I never showed love to myself, so then I couldn't receive nor give. I want to use the word properly. I know it's not the right word, but that's probably the one that comes up right now. I couldn't receive.
That meets your standards. Yeah.
Exactly, right?
Yeah. And I think it goes into a much deeper metaphysical issue going on, is that person is wanting to experience sacrifice, and people are gonna be like, no, I don't want to feel it. Yes, you do. You much would rather we love to be the victim, and we love to be the victimizer. Like, those are two favorite things on either side of the spectrum, because then it's outside of us, whatever it is, whether I'm harming you or you're harming, like, it's something outside. It's not happening within, when everything is happening within. So when people are give and people pleasing, it's because they're projecting out. And the reason why they feel so tired is because, first of all, they believe that they can ever run out of anything.
Yes.
But ultimately, it's because they want to believe that they're unworthy and they must sacrifice, right? Though that would be someone who ultimately identifies with the crucified Jesus, identifies that we must suffer and feel pain in order to be worthy of the love of whatever, anyone, right? But it's ultimately the love of God or love of source that we deep down subconsciously operate that way.
It's a separation, right? It's a separation you talk about. If we separate ourselves from source, which unfortunately most of us have done at least at some point in our life, and I know I've done it for a very long time, for decades, then it is like you said, right? Because you look at it as if I'm, let's say, in this position and I see a superstar walking on the street, right? Maybe my favorite soccer player. There's a big separation there because I'm like, oh, this person is on a pedestal. I can never be that person. But what I've come to realize right now is that when we look at that person, be it a god, be it an A-lister, be it an athlete, we can look like, wow, if they can do it, that means I could do it as well if I wanted to, or if that was my path. So it's more like giving me inspiration and empowerment that I can do anything I want. But like you said, what tends to happen, and I've done this so much in my life in the past, I would look out as someone that had more than me, whatever more was, right? Maybe a nicer car, maybe a nicer house, maybe a better partner. I put this in quotation, meaning that in my mind it was better, or better status, you name it. And then I would start to compare myself, which would then result in me beating myself up for not having that, which is the opposite of self-love, right? Which is the opposite of love, because it's all fear-based. And then that keeps you small. Because if we look at the ego, as you mentioned, and the mind, let's look at psychology. Let's go outside of spirituality for a second. What they've been able to prove, and look at this, is that your mind, its only job is to keep you alive.
Your brain.
Right? So yeah, your brain, right? To keep you alive, right? The ego with the brain together there, to keep you alive. Now, change and this realization of everything that goes around, that poses a risk to you staying alive. Right? Because what's outside the cave is scary. What's inside, it's, what do they say? It's like the evil you know is better than the one you don't, or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? That's why we all get stuck in so many spots, because of this idea that what's outside of us, not only is it separate, but it's scary.
Mm-hmm. And that's why we're stuck in the cave. And that's why, and the cool thing is there's a research out of UK that my mentor sent me probably 6 months ago, that they're actually realizing that, in fact, maybe the mind and the brain are not the same, and they've had it wrong this entire time. So that's a discussion for another day. We could unpack that.
Yeah. And speaking of that, if I can add something really quick, actually, that came up earlier and I didn't get a chance to mention it. I had a conversation with someone that's doing research at the Monroe Institute. And by the way, the Monroe Institute do a lot of research with different frequencies and to see the effect on the mind and whatnot, and the brain, of course, depending on how you look at this. And one of the things that they uncovered, I'm not sure if this is published or not, I haven't had a chance to look into it, is this idea that if you think about consciousness, right, like source, it's all one. And we're all connected to it, right? So it's, let's imagine there's this big lake up there, and we each have a straw that connects us, and we can, choose to use the straw to bring some of that water from that lake. Mm-hmm. Now, many of us have blocked the straw, right? Some of us have trickles coming in. But our brain is actually almost like not an antenna, but something to interpret whatever is coming through. To be like, wow, that's a lot that can come through. Let me take only the pieces that make sense for Constantin. So it's that perception, right? So I have a perception, you have, even though we're getting from the same source, our perceptions are different. That's where our brain comes in. Right? So like if you look to a radio, if I want to tune into a station, I just move the dial. Same thing with our brains. It's like we tune into one station, whatever station we have.
Right. Well, just like we could all hear each other's thoughts, but think how overwhelming that would be. So like it has to tune out some. Like you would go so crazy if like all of a sudden you just started hearing everybody's thoughts everywhere. But they believe back in the day of Atlantis that that's how communication was telepathically. Like yes. there was no speech. And we should talk about Atlantis sometime, because that's a really cool establishment. But ultimately, in my mind, like anything we're studying, it's a study of the illusion, right? So we're just illusionary studies for illusionary things, which I'm not saying is bad, but if you place weight on it, then you're just going to continue to stay in the illusion. It's really about seeing the illusion for the illusion it is, instead of continuously allowing the illusion to distract you to seek the answers outside of you, when you are the answer. It is you. Like, I'm not even separate from source. I am like I am a thought in source's mind. So like if here is God, I am a thought in God's mind, and then these are the thoughts that were in my mind, and we're all acting this out here. So literally it's like, and it's so mind-blowing to wrap your brain around, because your brain was created to decode the illusion, which is separation. So for your brain to actually like fully intellectualize oneness is like impossible. So that's when it comes into this place of knowingness, this place of you like, you can't explain by words, but you just feel that you know this is truth.
Yes.
And that's why, that's when I always use the statement like it just is, or I just is, or God is. It's like is the end of the conversation, because the second you try to complicate anything, you're in the ego. The ego loves to keep it complicated because it wants to distract you, period. Your highest self or the Holy Spirit, it's so simple, because truth is simple. Truth is not this elaborate freaking smoke and mirrors as shiny objects of bodies and cars and planes and trains and all this. I mean, you like, holy shit. That's why also it's, Patrick and I were talking, it takes like a certain place in your life to truly start to seek out a different way. And I'll be honest, spirituality's been used as another big smoke and mirrors and shiny object and distraction from truth, and we could talk about that a different day. But ultimately, like, you have had to have tried it all, or yeah, like even money and everything, and had to realize like it's still not found there. You really have to come to this place of surrender of like, there's got to be another way. And then that's when you start to able to really unravel the illusion. But I don't know why I got off on that tangent.
No, actually, that's beautiful. I love that. We have some engaged listener in the comments. So I want to call out Sue. Thank you again for all the beautiful comments you're leaving on our Instagram there. And I agree
I'm
with
not
you.
on Instagram. What's
You
Sue
should be.
saying? Hi, Sue.
Talking about self-love, being mastery, mind over matter, keeping standards and boundaries, discipline is all self-love, right? Like we were talking about this, and it's talking with Jesus as well, like commenting to what you were talking about earlier, which is all like it resonates with you and me, it resonates with our audience, it resonates with many people, because again, realizing it's not a separation. We can be that. We should, I mean, we are, sorry, when I say we can be that, we
Not
are
can,
that.
we are.
We are that, but we don't know that, which means that if we are and we don't know it, we can be that. We can bring ourselves to the remembrance.
But again, I want to bring this up because I know this is what you actually think, but how powerful words are. Like when I asked Constantin, do you want, you need to go find the treasure versus remember the treasure. So we already know we are that. We just have like we need to remember it. We have too much crap in the way. We know it. That's why you get those moments of knowingness, right? Like when you connect with your guides, you have this like knowingness that like I am one with them and they are one with me, and words can't describe it because it's activating your remembrance.
Yeah.
And the more you peel back the layers. So it's not that we can become or we don't know, it's that we've just been so distracted we've forgotten.
It's funny, yeah, because I mean, it was the first time articulating what I was thinking, and you're right. The words are so interesting because now you have to think about nothing. Now you have to consider how words are actually explaining these processes, which are sometimes fairly hard to explain because your ego gets in the way as well, and your perhaps conditionings and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So it's very, very interesting. Actually, as we're wrapping up here, I'm curious to see if there's anything else coming up for you specifically that you want to talk about. I know we started with the fast, so maybe we can end on that note a bit, but I'm not sure if there's anything else coming up for you that you feel it's important right now for us to bring up to the audience and for us to discuss.
Yeah, I think I think today's topic was really about consumption, right? It started out with the fast and how that's allowed. And I would just invite anyone who listens to this to just bring some awareness over the next couple days of how often you're consuming, how often your action is actually an action of consumption, and just start to pay attention to how like these concepts we've talked about today actually are showing up in your life.
Yeah, and for me, The only thing I would add there is like consumption usually equals distraction as well. That's what I've seen it in my life. When I'm consumption is on my mind, that's a distraction. I'm not saying consumption to just stay alive because we all have to eat, we all have to consume something. I'm talking about, oh, if I feel like I need to go consume this content on social media or consume this second meal that I know I don't need. Right? Those are all distractions from something that perhaps you need to dig deeper within yourself. And that's what I found actually with this fast as well. When I could declutter, so to speak, separate myself from the consumption in a way, if you may, it allowed for the connection to get stronger and allow for me to have a better realization of what's important in my life. Now, there's a constant battle there, though, I would say, still for me, of like occasionally this coming up and almost pulling you back. But because now I have more tools to be able to ground myself, like meditation, interaction with guides, and whatnot, I'm able to tap into that and eliminate those distractions fairly quickly. In fact, I'll be honest with you, my goal is to break my fast at the end of today, right? And right now we're recording this, or it's live, it's noon my time, right? So there's still about 7-8 hours before I want to break my fast, or that was my plan. And I kept getting these distractions as I was out shopping for the things I'm going to eat later, which is fruits and veggies. And I was like, oh, but I can break it now, right? I'm not feeling good. I'm a bit nauseous. I'm feeling a bit weak. Yeah, what's another 7 hours, right? And that's where I realized that I was going on a loop with my mind. So essentially, when I got to my car, I said, okay, you know what? I need to ground myself. I grounded myself, went into meditation a bit, and then I was able to release that. Because see, it wasn't the need to eat. I'm still not hungry, literally not hungry. But there was this desire in the back of my mind for some reason to go there. I'm not sure. I'm curious to see your interpretation of that.
Well, I think that would be like a whole beautiful conversation because in that moment you said, or earlier you said, well, almost like extra consumption. I'm talking about consumption in general because I don't believe we're actually living. I think we're actually dying here. Like we're having this dream of dying because literally since the second you came out of your mom's womb, you've been dying. So this is a dream of death. And my question is, do you actually need to eat, or is it another distraction, another false belief of the ego within this illusion? Because there's tons of studies out there that of people that like get fueled by the sun. There's
Yes,
plenty of
I've seen
people
that.
I know that have been on this journey of untying the ego, and they eat less and less and less, and most of them are literally just on liquids, like juices here or there. And it's not because they're sick and in a hospital and not able to move. It's because their mind has been so untied from the ego that they no longer hold food, like the need to eat out of shame and guilt is no longer a part anymore. So I think that would be a great conversation. And
Wow.
when my invitation is literally pay attention to everything, not overconsumption, but just start seeing like how literally every action you take is a form of consumption.
Okay, I think that's a perfect spot to
Yeah,
wrap
it's
up.
like
This,
boom.
this is so amazing. You got me thinking about so much. I was like, oh, I feel like I need to go into those research papers. I've seen it, like you said, I've seen people mention that the studies were, so some kid in India that went and sat in a tree, like someone that was very enlightened, sat in a tree for like weeks with nothing and somehow survived, right? Because supposedly the sun was feeding from the sun, right? So that still boggles my mind. I have to do some of my own looking
Yeah.
into it, but that's a beautiful topic for sure. Well, Ashley, I want to thank you so much for being here. We'll give people
Thank
a chance
you.
in a second to see where they connect with us. I want to thank our audience, everyone that's been engaged. Sue, I'm going to call you out again. Thank you for all the beautiful
Thank you,
comments,
Sue.
and everyone else that's been watching. I'm Constantin Morun. You'll find me at Unleash Thyself on YouTube, Unleash Thyself Today on Instagram, and all socials. We preach science to spirituality because my background is science, math, all the beautiful stuff. And now I'm on this beautiful spiritual journey, and I want to bring more of this to everyone. Ashley, how about yourself?
I'm Ashley Abramson, and you can find me Big Miracle Energy YouTube, Big Miracle Energy on Facebook. I have left Instagram. I don't know if I will ever be back. I also have a Big Miracle Energy Patreon. And if you would love to join in on this conversation once a month, as of now, it might start being twice a month. We do have a live discussion with the right-minded thinkers. It is the $33 level on Patreon, and we would love to see you there. But ultimately, my channel and who I am and what I am is I just share my journey of really unwinding the mind. I think I'm open and raw, and I think it's a good way for others to be able to learn. I'm a firm believer you can learn through watching. That's my Through the Lens episodes. But also, I believe having community and a safe space that is free of judgment, like Constantin, you and I do today, where you can have differing opinions and no one is right, no one is wrong. It just is. It's just an opportunity to grow.
Yes, and remember, as we grow into our light, so does everyone around us, and that means people watching and listening, they have the opportunity to grow into their light, not our light, their own very beautiful light, because we're all the same at the end of the day.
Or
But just
the
some of us,
light.
exactly, some of us just don't know that yet, and
Right.
I feel like that's part of our journey as we uncover this. It's like, oh wow, this is amazing. Let's have more people uncover this beautiful part of life, which is actually life itself. Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ashley. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday. Go enjoy your day, everyone.